This is obviously a survival story. If he doesn't get off the planet, he's going to die. And yet he is optimistic. He's funny. He doesn't take himself or a situation that seriously. So in making the movie, those are three kind of almost competing ideas.
The script was like a four-layer, beautiful four-layer cake with cherries and cream on top, because it had everything in there that you'd want to make a good movie, and it had the obvious entities of the possibility of great beauty and being Mars, the beautiful monster. It had a great possibility of all the great characters, and particularly the leading man who was stuck by himself. Great action, etc., etc. But actually, what surfaced as you were reading it was right in there somewhere had big heart, and the heart starts with Mark Watney, who demonstrates, and I'm going to quote the title of a film that was made here almost 25 years ago, a very good film called The Right Stuff. The Right Stuff fundamentally is courage under fire, courage under pressure, courage in peril, and it's a bit like being first day on this principal photography, right? You walk on that's funny, it's a joke. Okay. He lays the ground, the plan out, because he can only demonstrate courage, and courage will get him through. And as he says at the end of the film, I'll take one step at a time, and gradually I realize I have a plan, and then I have optimism, and then, by God, I may make it. And I think that's what evolves into his then communicating by using an old broken down asset that he finds in the desert 13 days away, and communicates with Earth. So from that moment on, everybody is helping everybody, which I think is a very good lesson for today. And it's not cute, it should be what we do. And I think even encouraging the Chinese to come into this was a very healthy thing to do rather than a cynical thing to do.
You make a very specific choice in production design, wardrobe, that this is not in the distant future. There are no hovercrafts back on Earth. People are wearing suits and ties just like they wear today. And the book, I think, is in many ways similar to that it's not in the distant future, but it's really in the here and now. How important was that as a storyteller to make sure that it was grounded in a physical reality that we recognize, that it wasn't an alien world?
I mean, I thought it was crucial. And as you say, there's no hovercrafts. The only difference is that we've been to Mars. You know, like it was important that we related to it, because the whole point is it's us. It's about scientists. It's not really about anything other than that.
Harry, when you come on board, I suspect you already know that you're going to be working with some disco music in the background, which is a little bit of a workaround. But you've worked with Ridley before. We talked about the stakes of this movie. They're incredibly perilous, and yet the film is also optimistic. As a composer, what does that present to you in terms of how you're going to go about capturing the tone, reflecting the tone of the story that Drew and Ridley are laying out in front of you?
Well, it's not just optimistic, but it's quite humorous as well, isn't it? Right. So the music just needed to purr along and support his character to begin with, and then blossom and hopefully add to the triumph of the situation at the end of the movie. But the geographical situation of the movie was quite tasty for me as well. Since we're on Mars, I haven't done a lot of Mars movies before.
You don't know what the local instruments are there?
You mentioned the disco music. It was when I read the script, which Ridley sent to me after we did Exodus last summer. I got a terse little note saying, "Read it, like it, do it," or something like that. There was no sort of option in there. Sorry, Drew, can you move back? I like to see him when I'm talking about him. The disco songs were there to my knowledge. Well, hey, you'll know because he wrote it. But in the script, it said song happened. I mean, the songs were there in the script. I don't recall the names. It didn't name the songs. Did it? Did?
No, it did. Yeah.
Oh, it did. I mean, I had a little
changed
to do.
Some of them.
Right. Right. I had little to do with that. But and in fact, when I came on board, so in post-production, there were several songs there, and they kind of stayed where they were. One notable exception, which we experimented with one part of the movie having a song there, and how everybody felt about that. That was actually a kind of a major moment of Watney crossing Mars, right? Making his journey across Mars, and it kind of worked on a few levels, didn't it, Red? We had a song in there, and then Ridley said one day he was in my studio, said, "Look, H, you've got to, do a score cue there, and, let's see what happens if you do. And so I did it, and he didn't hate it.
Is that high praise from Ridley? It didn't hate it?
It's in there, isn't it? Right.
So other than that, those songs were embedded in the film.
But we also hear a choir, and the choir at some points almost suggests a requiem, and yet it also suggests the Hallelujah chorus, that they are both kind of celebrating and also kind of a little ominous.
Well, I think Ridley's onto it, because it's for me, the humanity of the movie was something that shone right through, and I needed to find something for the choir to sing. I did, choirs are really good at singing Latin, but often that text would be taken from the creed or some religiously, that sort of thing. So it didn't seem appropriate to label that, but the spirituality of the situation was good. So I found a Russian philosopher who lived before Christ, and he talked on the nature of things. He talked about in his poem, the wonder of the infinity of the space and all these good things. So that's what they were.
So that's what the choir's singing in Latin.
And to me, they kind of were a bit like the Greek chorus. They were kind of us on earth saying, "Come on, we can get him. We'll get him." Yeah, and they were just sort of commenting on the situation. But
You worked closely with JPL and NASA, and obviously that gives you some verisimilitude that was probably important. But I want to talk about the people that you worked with and the character of scientists that work at JPL and NASA and what they meant to you, Drew and Ridley, in terms of how you approach this story, their spirit, their intellect, their passion, and how that reflected in the movie that you ultimately ended up making.
When I was sort of toying with the idea of doing this, when I was pacing around the house thinking about the book, I found it was haunting me, and my wife, I was talking to my wife about it, and she said, well, what's it about? And I said, well, it's about a guy who gets stranded on Mars, but what it's really about is a bunch of scientists. And she said, oh, you mean like your hometown? And this light bulb went off in my head, because I grew up in Los Alamos, New Mexico, which is just a town of rocket scientists. That's all it is. And it's this very strange town, and I realized that's what I loved so much about Andy's book. It's that he captured this thing that I hadn't seen captured before, which is the way scientists talk, the sort of camaraderie and the humor, and the sort of the humor in the face of failure, because science is really about failure. It's about you screw up and then you try again, and then you screw up and then you try again, and because of that, it sort of generates this deadpan sense of humor that I see happen over and over with scientists, and to me that was everything. To me that was like that's the soul of our book, is that of the movie. It's like it's the metaphor for life. It's all about fucking up over and over, and then you try to get somewhere. And so when it came down, time, we went to JPL, talked to NASA, and you'd see the same thing. They all have the same Far Side calendars on their desk. They have like the same. It's all the same, scientific progress like that. And Ridley captured it so beautifully between them. It's about the camaraderie.
Ridley, is that what you took away from that, the camaraderie? I mean, what was your impression?
I know I was actually in Washington 2 nights ago, and we ran it at a very beautiful theater at the National Geographic. It actually looked as good as this. And in there were NASA, they shared the evening, NASA and some JPL and National Geographic. And the boss of NASA was an astronaut 30 years ago. And the senator, who's now constantly hounding for more and more funding, was the astronaut with him 30 years ago. And the other astronaut who was on stage sitting with me has been up there 6 times to the International Space Station, who's about to go up next week. And it's a job, but these guys are like savant, very mature, genius children. Their enthusiasm is unbelievable. And they just love what they do. The woman next to me was she's probably going to be, I think she looked like 38, but actually, yeah. But she was the senior scientist who is in charge of going to Mars. And that's their plan. They are assuming they will be on Mars mid-2020s, maybe late 2037, 38.